It's very emotional because all our history is there. You see this emperor with this magnificence, a combination of colonial and the Aztecs history. But then again, you're reminded of when we were conquered. It's a cultural shock. So being back in Mexico in hands of a new collector is such a treasure because all the art collectors are just keepers and will make the artwork safe and taken care of for future generations.
Sotheby's is the temporary custodian of some of the world's most rare, remarkable and coveted art and objects. In each episode, we'll be exploring the significance and journey of an extraordinary work told by those who know it best. This is The Specialist. On today's episode, the journey of an anonymous 17th century portrait believed to be the only surviving likeness of Moctezuma II, the last Aztec emperor. Lulu de Creel explains how it was passed down through noble families, vanishing into obscurity, then resurfacing centuries later in a Paris apartment before being repatriated to Mexico. Lulu is chairman Latin America. During her time at Sotheby's, she has worked closely with collectors and has been a key player in integrating Latin American artists into our global auctions, resulting in record prices for artists such as Frida Kahlo, Diego Rivera, and Leonora Carrington. Let's join Lulu now with more.
So this portrait is probably the most important artwork of colonial Mexican art that we know of. It's the only image of the Emperor Moctezuma, the last Mexican emperor, just before he surrendered to the Spanish conquerors. It was when Tenochtitlan, what was called Mexico at that time, was the most important city in Mesoamerica. At that time, Moctezuma was totally impressed by the Spanish. Now they arrived with all these new clothing and they were white and tall and with blue eyes. So Moctezuma and the Tenochtitlan people thought they were gods that were coming. So it was very pacific at the beginning. Moctezuma was very opulent. He liked to throw all these big banquets and dinners, and there were also sacrifices in the other hand. So it was a very dynamic city. The Spanish were also very impressed by Moctezuma and the wealth and the architecture and the food and the clothing and everything. So for both countries, it was a cultural shock. This painting is a life-size painting of Moctezuma. It's oil on canvas. It's dark, and it's supposed to be lit this way. So actually, there are two paintings. At the beginning, when this painting was commissioned, the Spanish didn't like the final result because in the first image, you could see a Moctezuma very triumphant, very opulent. So at that time, they wanted to introduce religion also into the indigenous people. So they painted over this canvas. They changed the face, looking more of a Christ. So that was also a way to introduce religion into this new order of people who were not Catholics. They believed in gods. And when the Spanish came, of course, they introduced Catholicism. And that's why they changed this painting. The figure wears an Aztec diadem, like a crown. But there is also like a Spanish crown in the floor. He's also wearing chest armor, studded with jewelry. He has a feather skirt and an Aztec sword. The colors are warm, infused with an earthy red. When you're standing in front of that image, you can really feel the presence of the emperor. But also, you can also see the sadness of his face because he was defeated by the Spanish. It's a very imponent picture. The message was to show the people that Moctezuma, being a great emperor, now he's not anymore. He's just a vassal of the Spanish people. They wanted to represent him without removing his history, his greatness, but also saying, now it's our time. We believe this is the only full-size image of Moctezuma, and this image is the most reproduced image of Moctezuma, represented in a lot of books and documentations in Mexico and all over the world. We still do not know exactly who painted the portrait or when it was painted. I don't think we'll ever know who did this painting. It left Mexico probably after it was commissioned. There is a story saying that it was commissioned by one of the viceroys who married a descendant of Moctezuma, and it was done just to please the family. That's how we think it left for Europe and then was lost for, I think, 300 years. The piece reemerged during the early 19th century in Paris. We have no idea how it went there. And then it appeared in Paris in the 1980s in a very prestigious collection of Geo Dupin. And then it's when these Mexican women found the Moctezuma. So this is like a really love story. The lady was in charge of the Mexican exhibition in Paris. And the Mexican government asked her to go and look for any possible collector who lends any surrealist picture to build up this show. She met Geo Dupin and she was asked to go to her apartment. The collector showed her around and suddenly she said, listen, I have something that could be interesting. So she comes into her closet and this painting who was rolled. And she unrolls it and there was Moctezuma. Immediately, the guest knew that it was something important. She convinced Jill to sell the portrait to her. She had nowhere to put it, so she lays it on her bed. She didn't want to roll it again because it was losing the pigment of the painting. So she took the task to restore it. It took her years. When she comes back to Mexico, she starts talking to a specialist and they realized that it was confirmed that it was the Moctezuma painting. And that's how Moctezuma comes back to Mexico. There was a festival in Mexico for it. And she decided to make an homage to Moctezuma. She found out that it was an opera written for Moctezuma. And when the festival was inaugurated, there was the opera of Moctezuma revealing the painting. So it was really like the culmination for her to bring back Moctezuma with the honors he deserved. Sadly, right after that, she passed away and the painting was inherited to the family. And that's where my relationship starts with Moctezuma. My friend calls me and says, Lulu, I have something for you. And he says, I've never shown this to anyone. Maybe you can help. When I saw it, because it's a life-size painting, you could tell there is this vibe and this strength. And this was also very emotional for him because it was his mom's. He was telling me all the stories about how the mother was totally obsessed with him. And she will even talk to Moctezuma, when she was feeling lonely. And months later, when it was in my office, I was doing exactly the same thing. It was like part of us. You could feel his presence. When my client decided to consign, first, I thought I had the obligation to show it to the Mexican government. I tried to make them acquire this work, but of course, it was difficult times. It was election year, so they passed on it. And we decided to put it at auction because we didn't really know who will be interested. All the colonial works have this restriction. It's called monumento artístico, where they cannot leave the country because of monumental artistic or patrimony restrictions. It's complicated to deal with those paintings. So we couldn't send it to New York. We had a lot of publicity. We did essays. And also I tried to do the same thing as the previous owner. And I did a very beautiful event at a museum. So everybody could admire. We also had a version of the opera replayed that night. So I kind of felt that we were trying to revive her discovery through trying to replicate in a smaller scale what she had done. I think Moctezuma got into my skin. It has an energy. Can you imagine where that painting was before? It's incredible to imagine all the places that it has been, and then suddenly you are in front of that painting. And it transmits sadness, but it transmits you history and glory. So for me, it was really a discovery and something that made a change. Now, it was not something that anybody could have. It was meant to be for somebody really who is interested in history. It was hanging in my office. So the clients will come into my office. And there was one specific client collector who came into the office. And we were standing in front of the image and I was telling the story. And then I realized that he was totally overwhelmed by the story. I could see in his face and his eyes that he was looking at the Emperor Moctezuma and he could relate to him. And I'm very happy that he got it. And it's in a very important collection now in Mexico. Actually, it has the record at auction for any colonial work. And he will be the perfect guardian. He will continue his legacy, continuing with the research to learn more about it. That's the fun part about working at Sotheby's, to discover these gems and these treasures. Of course, it's complicated when you have restrictions with a country, but that's why you have to find the perfect collector. And that's a great responsibility. But at the end, that's the most important thing for us. It's so important to take care and value this particular painting, such as Moctezuma, because it's not only a painting that is going to be a decor for a house or be standing in a museum. It's really, it has so much history. It is more than 500 years old. And it hopefully will never be destroyed. And we can communicate and still transmit of our history through one painting. That's what art is here for.
Thank you for joining us on The Specialist. This has been brought to you by Sotheby's Financial Services. SFS offers asset-based loans to unlock the value of your fine art, automobiles, and other luxury collectibles. To step further into the world of Sotheby's, visit any one of our galleries, which are open to the public. Go to sotheby's.com to find out more.